In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a page of LI. So I have a blank UL, and utilizing JavaScript, we're going to create these LI events, not just events, we're going to create the LIs. We're going to add a click event to each of these LIs as they're being created. We're going to do it on the window on load event, and we're going to do it creating functions. And you can see that when I click on each of these individual LIs that we are creating inner HTMLs. We're being console log the inner HTML. And these are all being generated, all of these LIs are being generated from an array, so that if somebody adds an element to the array, all we would need to do is add the element and the rest of the code should just work. There should be no more hard coding of HTML that we would need to do to make that happen. So instead of just talking, let's dive in and see how to make that work. All right, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a load event on the window. And so we do that with the window add event listener. And then on load, we're going to create a function that's called initialize. And I'm just making this up. I mean, obviously this isn't one that already exists, but I'm going to create a function that's called initialize page. And so in that function, I can use it to initialize whatever I want to get initialized or created before my JavaScript page or before somebody starts reacting with my page. So I'm going to do function initialize page spelling. See, I gave myself a word that's hard to spell just to make this even more challenging of a video. All right, initialize page. And at first, let me just make an alert so I know that I've done it properly. And so what should happen at the moment is when the window loads, I should get this, it should fire off this function, and then an alert box should come up. So let's see what happens. All right, so I know that we're going into this particular function. So I'm going to erase my hello so that I can move forward. All right, so the first thing I need to do is I'm going to initialize a variable. And so the idea then was I'm going to have a UL tag, and the idea inside that UL tag was that I was going to put those list items. So I'm going to give it an ID, and my ID will be equal to something like the list. And so the next thing I need to do then is I will come into my function in which I'm going to to get a handle on that UL, because I need to get element by ID. I need to grab this element so I can put LIs within it. So I think what I'm going to do, just for clarity, is I'm going to create the variable up above. So it's going to be called listings. And I'm going to then do, let's see, listings equals document get element by ID, document get element by ID, and then I'm going to grab the list. Okay, and if you remember from the video I provided on scope of variables, if I had created it as a var down here, if I had put var listings here, it still would have been global in scope. But this just sort of makes it really clear that it is definitely intended to be global rather than sticking it in the middle of a function. So either would work, but I'm going to do it this way. So I've created a global variable for listings, which is getting this UL element so that I can later on apply some LIs to it. So that's where we're headed. So now in my initialize function, I'm just going to put some comments in here to state that this is intended to initialize or to create, initialize, set up, whatever word you're comfortable with, initialize the page, which is kind of intuitive based on the function name. All right. All right, so now the idea is that we need to create, I'm just going to paste in an array that I've already created off screen, so I'm not fat fingering there. So I've created an array that has HTML and CSS in it. And the idea then, if you remember from the opening video, part of the video was that we're going to put these items as LIs inside the UL. And so if we just then add another element to the array, it should just work. So what I'm going to do next then, again in my initialize, I'm going to create another function. I'm going to call a function called create the list. And so remember that functions should be perform a single task. So I don't want to write the code for the create list inside the initialize page function, because its only job is to set things up. I'm going to call functions from within, because therefore this create list will do one function, and that will be create a list. So yes, I could have put the code, I need the word function in front of there, function. I could have put the code to create the list inside of here, but it just is better programming practice to create a separate function that does that single task. So initialize page, its task is to do the initialization steps, and that if we need to call other methods to make that happen or other functions to make that happen, that's fine. So, and this only job is to, with all the statements that are within the code block here, will be to create the list. All right, so let's create, before I tackle the actual looping through the array, I'm just going to create an item inside the li to see how that works. Once I create that item, I will do it via a loop. So one step at a time, so it's easier to troubleshoot. So here we go. All right, so the first thing to do is show you how to create an element on the fly. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create an li that we are going to stick in between the opening and closing ul tag. So we're going to use something called create element. I'll just write it down. And then you put in the name of the element. For our purposes, we're going to create an li element. And so this is what that method looks like. And so what we'll do then is I'm going to create a variable for, I'm just going to call it the li item. And we're going to use document create element, just like I put there in the notes, create in the comments element. And then it's going to be an li. All right, so we've created it in memory. We haven't actually done anything with it on the DOM yet, on the HTML page, but we're created the li, and now we can also attach pieces of that those properties. In other words, I want the li item, and I know that it has an inner HTML property, for example. So I'm going to just put it as test for the moment. So the idea is I want to create an li item as if I had physically on this page, which I didn't do. Let me just kind of show you what I did in essence. So I'm going to put, so line 18 is simply creating an li event. So an li object. So I created an li object with line 18. I then did inner HTML equals test. So I'm putting the word test in here. And all of this is in memory. It's not actually put onto my page yet. And so let me erase that so I don't have it showing so we can see it actually work. And so the last piece of that is to grab this UL, which we set up at the very beginning. So my UL is under listings, right? So listings is my document get element by ID, the list. So I'm going to grab that element, we call it listings. And now I'm going to use what's called append child. And I'm going to put in my L item. So what it's saying is, in this listings, which is the parent, we've created an li event, li object. I don't want to keep on saying event. We've created an li object. We gave it a value of inner HTML, and now we want to put it in between. We want it to be a child of list item, not li item. I spelled that wrong. There we go. Li item. All right, so let's see if that works. I'm going to refresh, and now in fact I have a test li. So if I look in my inspect element, I should actually see there's the UL, which we created by hard-coded by the beginning. And now you can see my li got created, and in my li I have the test. So any of the properties that are associated with the element that you're creating can also be added to this. So for example, let's add a click event to our item. So I'm going to do li item event, add event listener, just like we've done before. I'm going to add a click event, comma, and we'll just create another function just to keep everything clean. We'll call it button or item clicked. How about that? Item clicked. Okay. So that implies that I need to create a new function to handle item clicked. So function item clicked. And remember in a prior video of this, in this module, I can receive in a variable the object that was clicked. So whatever got clicked and then ran this function, I need to grab it in a variable. Remember, this variable can be anything, it can be something, but kind of standard is anytime we receive something like that, we call it an E, kind of that event that happened is what we're catching. And so let's just see if, let's do a console.log e.target.innerHTML. Let's see if we are in fact able to console log the inner HTML, which should be test when we have a click event. So let's go back to, let me get rid of the dev tools because it's getting really confusing with all I got here. Okay, so I'm going to refresh, and now I should be able to click on test, but I don't have my dev tools open anymore, so I just have not enough real estate here. All right, so I'm going to click on the test and see if test is in fact getting written to the console. So yes, it is. Okay. So now that we've successfully accomplished doing one item, let's, instead of putting the word test in there, let's create a loop that's looping through our array that will then, for each item in that array, create an li element. We'll give it an inner HTML. So in this case, it would be HTML. The next time it will be CSS. We'll add an event listener that will be smart enough to receive that each individual element's click event, and then we will also append that child to the UL. Whew, that's a handful. Let's make it happen. All right, so I'm going to close out the dev tools. I think I am. There we go. So I don't have so much busyness going on. So this code should work. I just need to make the alterations to make it loop through an array. So to do that then, loop through our array. So I'm going to use a for loop for var I equals 0, I less than the array name, which is array to learn. And then remember, we can use the length property, so I don't have to hard code in that number 2, because I might add more on later on. And so we need to increment I++. And now I can move this code into the for loop so that every time we run through the for loop now, that's not indented nicely, there we go. Every time we run through the for loop for each item in our array, we should be able to create an li. We need to change this inner HTML to the value of the array. So we have that already. We can change it to the name of the array to learn, and then that array name, or the value will be I, because I is getting incremented each time in the loop. Add that event listener along with the item clicked is the event that you're going to run on the click, and append the child. So let's just see what happens. So I'm going to refresh my page. Sure enough, there's my HTML and CSS, so that part worked well. Let's go into the dev tools and see what we have there. Spread this out some so we can, I'm going to close out the HTML so maybe you can see these all side by side if that's helpful. So in my dev tools, I can click on my UL. I see that the LIs were both created. Inside the LIs, I have an HTML. I have an HTML, looks like I have an event that is assigned to it. Okay, that's good because I wanted an event assigned to it. So now I'm going to raise this up a little bit. No, I'm not, this wrong one. And boy, too many things to mess with. But the point is I should be able to click on HTML and that inner HTML is going to display. And so my click event is working properly. And the bottom line is a final test will be, let's see, now that I've learned HTML and CSS, I also need to learn JavaScript. So if I add this to the array, will everything else just work? Whew, let's see. All right, so yes, I didn't have to change anything. Nothing was hard-coded, so automatically all of my my new li got attached. So the final test is, will I click on JavaScript? Will it show up here in the console? Let's see. And there it is. So in this video, we have successfully created a onload event from the window loading. we set up a initialization function so that we can initialize our page with JavaScript, whatever it is that we needed to do via JavaScript. Because that needs to be a single task, meaning that I'm only going to do initializations in my function initialize page, I created another function that's called create list, because its only job is going to be create our LIs. So I called that create list. I created that function, and in that function I looped through my array, which is set up here in the very beginning. I looped through that in an array, and for every element in the array I created an LI. I used my array to fill in the inner HTML. I added an event listener, and I appended that LI to the UL element. My event listener utilized an item clicked function, and at the moment that function is not really doing anything exciting except re-emphasizing the fact that by putting in a variable here as a parameter, this function is receiving information about whomever clicked it. In other words, each of these individual elements is a unique click event. So by doing that, I can catch dynamically whoever clicked me, and I can get some information about that particular element. So remember, if you're not sure about anything that's being received inside a function through these parameters, just console log. So if I just console log E, what am I getting? Let's just see. So if I console log E, I'm getting that entire LI element. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff that I'm getting in it, but part of that LI element is the inner HTML property. So then, okay, so I'm getting that LI. Now I can grab that inner HTML. And so now I should be getting just the inner HTML. Perfect. All right. You are off and running now with creating your own dynamic elements, and you should be getting comfortable now with arrays.